Hey everyone, welcome back to my bike build. This is my SV650. I've been building sort of like a street tracker Brat style build. In this video, I've got my subframe that's pretty much finished, and I'm going to be installing it, getting it back on the road, and being able to actually drive this thing properly, and then hopefully add some finishing touches. So let's get into it. So don't mind this duct tape here on the front of the seat. That's just temporary to close that out for now. I'm going to fix it all up later. But seat and subframe is on and brake light is in. So check this out. If I turn the key on, brake light's lit up. So I love how that is looking. I also got the signals in here. I think I need to put a resistor in the wires because the LED is probably not pulling enough amps, and that's why it's flicking so fast. I got to figure that out. But yeah, it's on. So I'm going to button everything up. I'm going to go over everything, make sure it's all torqued down properly, and not going to fall off as I'm driving on the road, and get that license plate on, and then I can take it for a rip. Alright, got the license plate fab done. Just something simple to hold it for now. We'll definitely paint it later, maybe update it, we'll see. Went over the bike, everything's pretty snug and tight and torqued down to spec, so we should be good for our proper ride now. Let's get this thing fired up. This thing is a lot of fun to drive. Actually, drove pretty well. Everything runs really good. Probably the motor does need some tuning. I'm going to run some seafoam through the gas, just try and clean everything off. And then I've also got to do bigger jets because I've got a Canyon filter on there and I've got a much shorter exhaust, so I've got to change out the jets. It's super loud, like really loud. So I think I'll probably end up doing a new exhaust at some point anyways. I'll try and add another silencer in there or something like that to quiet it down a bit. But I'm going to be driving over the next little bit, I think, and then just tweaking it as I go. A few other things I got to do. I want to change the stance on it. I'll probably want to lower the front, just drop it through the triple clamps there, drop the forks through, and raise the rear maybe a little bit. I like the stance, but I do want more of a lower front end stance, and I want more of a gap here. So I might even one day, I don't know, try and rip into the subframe or lower the seat a little bit more. Other than that, a couple small things. Got to do a front fender. Got to fill this gap in underneath the seat. Got to change the color of the tank. I do want different tires on it as well. Yeah, all the kind of stuff to bring in the final details of this bike. Okay, so I got this front end lowered. It actually wasn't that hard. All I had to do was basically loosen off this bolt right here, that one right there for the clip-ons, and then these two lower ones. Put a jack in the middle here and then hit it down with a mallet. I lowered it down 15 millimeters on each side. That's sort of like what was recommended, between 5 and 15 max. I'm going to play around with this and see how it handles. Definitely a much better stance, and I think if I raise the back end a little bit, the bike will be sitting really good. So before I get to raising the rear of the bike, I do want to actually make a chain guard here. I'm going to be riding this bike a little bit, and I just don't want this chain to snap and chop my leg off. So I'm going to build something simple that's going to come up and cover it a little bit first. So the bike already had these adjustable dog bones on them, but they were already as short as they could go, and I wanted to raise the rear end of the bike, which means shortening these. So just cut one side down and screwed it back in. One side was threaded normal, one side was reverse threaded. So I just cut the normal thread down, and then if I ever want to lengthen it back out, that's fine. I can just kind of screw this back out. Okay, I think this looks way better. Back end's definitely sitting higher, front end's a little bit lower. This stance is much more what I'm looking for. So yeah, this is perfect. This seat also is a little bit low because what I did was I just took everything out of the bottom underneath. So when I cut that down a little bit, that's kind of what it's going to look like, which, yeah, that's pretty rad. So main objective now is to get this bike running really good. So I got this kit here from Dynojet. It's a whole bunch of new jets and some new needles. Gonna get these carbs running properly for the airbox and the exhaust that it's got. Before I do that, I'm gonna actually lift the front of the tank, just put some spacers here. Apparently you get a bit more airflow through here, and also aesthetically I think it might look good too. So I'm just gonna put some rubber spaces in there first, and then we'll get to the carbs. Okay, so I took it out for a rip, got it nice and warm, and also got a feel for how it's running and where there's issues. Got a whole bunch of mud on the fenders and everywhere, which I kind of expected, but that's life. And what I did was I put some tape here on the throttle and marked 1/8 inch, quarter, half, 3/4, 7/8, and full throttle. So when I'm riding on the bike, I can just have a glance and see roughly where I'm at on the throttle and where the issues are happening. The main three issues that I'm having is when I get to higher RPM, wide open throttle, it's cutting out. So it pulls really, really hard, and then it gets kind of closer to red line and it just loses all power and starts sputtering. So I think that's just a key indicator that my main jet isn't big enough. The other thing I'm having is that like just a little bit of throttle, about 8 throttle, it'll ride a little bit rough, a lot of crackling and just not smooth. So my cruising isn't very good. And then the last thing I'm having is that when I let off the throttle, I'll get tons of backfiring and popping. So something's going on there. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with replacing the main jet, go for something a little bit bigger. That should start with fixing that wide open throttle issue. We'll see how that runs, and then we'll sort of like work our way backwards. I've got a whole sort of manual walkthrough thing, super detailed, that I'm going by. So we'll see how it all fixes it. So if you're new to carbs, this is basically the inside of the bottom. So you get the float right here. This allows gas to come in and out. There's a needle right there, and you can actually adjust the float, which is just sort of like your low RPM riding speed. Then you got your idle jet right here and your main jet right there. So this will do lower RPMs. This will do upper RPMs, and then you've also got your needle valve, which I'm going to open up in here later. The one I'm replacing right now is this main jet. Dynojet kit comes with a bunch of different sizes, and this is the size that it says to go for if I have a Canon filter and an aftermarket exhaust. This is a DJ144. So I'm just going to put this one in here, tighten it down, take a few runs with this jet on, and see how that one does. So unfortunately, the bigger jets didn't seem to solve my sputtering issues or change much, but there's still a lot of things I got to do. I got to change the needles and shim those, and I have to synchronize the carbs. So if the carbs are out of sync, that could definitely be what's causing it. So I'm going to finish this off and do all that kind of stuff. Change out the needles, make sure that the air fuel mixer screws are good, and synchronize the carbs, and then we'll take it for another ride. Got one side open here and got the needle out, which I'm going to change and shim a little bit, and I also have to drill one of these little holes bigger. that's in there. The other side, definitely screwed myself over and I stripped this bolt. You're supposed to use the JS tip screwdriver, which I did use, but it's still stripped. It's in there pretty good. So I'm gonna have to get that out somehow and replace it with something else. I definitely recommend using the JS tips because these just, even on the carbs and on the choke and everything, they want to strip really easy with a standard screwdriver. So you got to use the JS tip, which is much straighter and it's not tapered or anything like that. Okay, so the DynoJet kit does come with instructions, thankfully, as well as drill bits, new needles, jets, a bunch of stuff. So what I had to do is I had to pull this out of the end and then pull the needle out. I just use needle nose pliers, it pops right out. You have to start with drilling this top hole a little bit bigger using the drill bit that they provide with you. And then I replaced the needle. So this is the old needle, and this is the new DynoJet one. If you can see, it's got different levels that you can put the pin on, so you can clip it on any one of those grooves there. They say to start with 3 down from the top, which I've got. So it's got a little clip, and then it's got a washer on one side and spacer on the other side. So I'm just gonna put this all back together, put it in back in the carb, and then I'm gonna do the other side. So last thing I need to do is adjust this air fuel mixture screw. It's got still the cap on it from factory, so I have to drill that out to get to it. And then I just bottom it all the way out and come back 2.5 turns. And that should be my sort of low end throttle stuff. So after working with these carbs, I'm learning about how that all works, all the different settings. So basically what you get is the 2 different jets in the bottom here. The pilot jet is the one that's responsible for sort of your lower throttle settings, kind of 1/8 quarter throttle, lower RPMs, giving that base amount of fuel. Then it goes for your mid throttle to this needle valve here. So this is vacuum controlled, hence this whole vacuum setting here. And what this does is as your throttle opens and you get more vacuum, this opens up, and then that pulls the needle back, which gives you more fuel. The reason why it's vacuum like this is that when you come off the throttle and your throttle plate, which is in there, closes suddenly, this kind of gradually goes back, which allows you to kind of have a more gradually come off the throttle. You're not stuttering after closing the throttle plate really fast. To adjust sort of your mid-range throttle, leaner or richer, you can move the notch on the pin or that clip up or down, or you can shim if you don't have ones with these clips. For these clips, if you move the clip farther back, which means the needle goes farther in, you're going to run leaner. And if you pull the needle back, which means you move that clip down, you're going to run richer. Or if you were to shim it, you would run richer. The last one is the main jet. So the main jet's kind of your wide open throttle when you're using the most gas, higher revs, and bigger or smaller is going to change how much you're running richer or leaner for that. So I've adjusted all 3. I'm going to put these carbs back on the bike now, and I'm going to sync the carbs to make sure that they're both running the same, because with 2 carbs, if one is pulling more air or the throttle is open more than the other one, then obviously you're going to get the 2 different cylinders operating differently, and they're kind of going to be fighting against each other. So I'm going to make sure that that is working properly. Okay, so I believe I have the carbs synced. I'll show you basically how it works. So what you got to do is from 2 different gauges, you got to hook up one to the back carb. So it's this line here that goes off the back of the carb and goes to the fuel petcock here. So put a T in there and use that. You need vacuum on here, otherwise this won't let any gas through and you'll run out of gas. So put a T in there. And then the other one is up here on the front. I don't know if you can see down in here, but I put a hose in there before when I had the carb out, and I just had it blocked off so that I can easily plug into it. If you don't, that's a huge pain just to get that on. So plugged into there, so that's one on the front, one on the back. That means that pulls vacuum from each. When you have it running, the needles start fluttering like crazy, so you use these to basically close it all the way and then open it up a little bit. So there's just a little bit of fluttering, and then you turn this screw here, which is the throttle connector plate that goes between the 2 carbs. Turn it backwards and forwards until you kind of get these 2 facing roughly, or like getting to roughly the same place. Apparently it doesn't really matter where, just as long as they look the same. That means they're both pulling about the same vacuum. So these should be in sync now. I'll take it for a rip and we'll see if that makes any difference. So it's definitely running a lot better. I think still a little ways to go, but I realized that I forgot to install my air filter. So it's still going to be running very lean because it's taking in way too much air. So I'm going to put that in, going to drive it for the next little bit. I'm also going to put some seafoam in the gas. It'll just help clear everything out, clear out the carbs, hopefully clean off the valves a little bit as well, get everything running really nice. I think as well, if I want to tune it properly, I do need a tachometer. You're supposed to have a dyno as well, obviously, but I don't have that. But a tach would help, so I might install one later on and tune it a bit finer. So I think I'm going to leave this video here. Lots of fun getting into the carbs and learning a lot about them. Hopefully I get this bike running properly. If you have any tips or feedback or info for me on these carbs, definitely happy to hear anything that will help me get this bike running properly. I'm going to be digging into this bike a little bit more over the next couple weeks, finishing off a lot of the looks for it and really pulling everything together. You know, paint, minor details, all that kind of stuff. I also ordered some new tires for the bike that I think will suit the look perfectly. So excited to get those in and get them mounted. Yeah, I'm just going to continue riding this over the summer and keep enjoying it, and hopefully another video to come soon.